Film Companion gets you your film fix. Hit the bell icon and subscribe to get notified every time we drop a new video.
It's been 2 years since Mirzapur, but season 2 takes off a few days after the Gorakhpur wedding massacre, which was the end of season 1. After murdering Sweetie Gupta and Bablu Pandit in front of their respective partners Guddu and Golu, the heir apparent of Mirzapur, Munna, recovers from his bullet wounds. He goes back to craving the Mirzapur throne and disappointing his Don father Kalin Bhaiya, who's the great Pankaj Tripathi, who in turn has his eyes set on bigger goals, which is the Uttar Pradesh cabinet. Meanwhile, survivors Guddu and Golu, who are heartbroken and angry, recover in the wilderness while planning eternal vengeance on the Tripathi family. Technically, that's all there is to 10 episodes of season 2. It's a nightmare of modern succession and a story of old school revenge. It's also the only direction Mirzapur 2 could have taken. Perhaps that's a problem inherent to writing sequels of popular dramas. It's no more about the what, so most creators tend to overcompensate with the how. Multiple new arcs, multiple new characters, shock value deaths, heartland expletives, macro ambitions. Mirzapur 2 has it all. It's certainly guilty of every one of these crimes, but I like that it remains faithful to its ecosystem. Anything else, like bringing back the dead or drowning in flashbacks, might have felt like a desperate reaction to the popularity of the first season. There may be too much going on, but none of it defies the deep-rooted oppression of its characters. The series doesn't go out of its way to reflect a critical urban gaze of 2020. For instance, its secondary Muslim representation in a war of upper caste Hinduism. The Tripathis and the Shuklas and the Yadavs remain in the spotlight, but the Makbuls and the Lalas and the Shabnams and the Zarinas don't hijack the mess for the sake of diversity. They remain quietly consequential, restoring the moral balance of Mirzapur when their counterparts spiral beyond redemption. Unlike Raat Akeliya and Gulabo Sitapo, the series tangibly hints at a theme of slow-burning feminism too. The game can be seen here. It's no gimmick though. The males of Mirzapur are so obsessed with power and deceit and bloodshed and politics that it's only natural for the women to emerge out of the shadows both discreetly and emphatically.
मुझसे कोई रोया भी नहीं अब तक.
जिंदा तो रह लें, फिर रोएंगे.
Tripathi's scheming wife, Beena, who's played by a terrific Rasika Dugal again, is arguably this season's most resounding character. On being reduced to a sex toy by her depraved father-in-law, who's played by Kulbhushan Kharbanda, she starts to weaponize the misogyny of the household by exploiting their egos. A grieving Golu too has a very refined arc. She is unwavering and haunted in her pursuit of vengeance. Her possessiveness for Guddu is purely primal. She resents him for forgetting her late sister when a new girl enters the fray. While it's natural to wonder how season 2 might have looked if the Masi and Pilgaonkar characters had survived that massacre, there's a distinct kind of cinematic tension about the two less interesting and ill-equipped siblings being forced to become people they're not. A bookish introvert and a brawny thug are so unfamiliar to the concept of tragedy that everything becomes an exam to earn those tears. But then again, there's the traffic on this highway. The list of people who have an axe to grind with the Tripathis keeps growing. Consequently, it's difficult to keep track of the emotional continuity of the main characters. Each time we see Guddu and Golu hiding out in the mansion of a Muslim leader, we have to think hard to recall what their last scene was and where exactly they stand in their flowchart for revenge. Perhaps that's where the performances come in. Most of them are functional and smart, because they're essentially roles within roles. Everyone seems to be putting on an act to serve their own agenda. But the advantage of a loose cannon like Munna Tripathi, who is again excellently performed by Divyenndu Sharma, is that his sheer unpredictability frees him from the shackles of continuity. It doesn't matter where he was in the previous scene an episode ago, because his rage and resentment allows Munna to revel in lateral movement. Pankaj Tripathi as his father Kalin Bhaiya doesn't have the same freedom, but he still manages to overcome the burden of being trapped by a very elaborate plot. At its core, Mirzapur is easy entertainment under the ruse of a long-form Gangs of Wasseypur experience. It is driven by the physical, by the action, the dialect, and the unsubtle twists and morbid humor. But the screenplay isn't all style. There's a lot of substance in the way the writing reveals the thematic dualities of simultaneous threads. The script is carefully constructed to deflate the randomness of its offshoots. When the palette is so busy and colorful, these little details run the risk of escaping our attention. But they are also the reason Mirzapur holds such a specific allure. It's why the series continues to occupy a space that's one rung higher than mass, but one rung lower than class. Evidently, this balance is a sweet spot for Indian television shows. Fortunately, Mirzapur 2 finds peace in its patterns.